This week I'm going to be talking about the need to take time to tell our stories. So I've been asked a lot over the last week especially, but even before that, about what the priorities will be coming back to school and how I want things to go. Now, I've heard an awful lot about, oh, we've got to play catch up, we've got to get this done, we've got to get that done. That's not what I want to talk about today. So basically what I'm talking about is needing the time to tell our stories. So this is something that whatever trauma anyone's gone through, major or minor, we tell our stories. We need time to tell our stories. So for example, you talk to any mother and father who've just had a baby, and they will go through in great detail the birthing experience, you know, more detail sometimes than we want. I was as guilty of that as everyone else, you know, because it was a traumatic event and a life-changing event. Last week when I did my video blog about people with disability coping through the pain and things like that, that was part of me telling my story because I had fallen over and dislocated my shoulder. I needed to tell that story. I needed to relive it, to come to terms with it, to understand it. This is something we all do in different ways. Now, what I'm thinking about is that everybody, when they come back, you know, through this past pandemic, that's still this current pandemic, we've all got stories to tell. Now, for some of us, the changes that we've undergone have been huge, and for others they've been less so. But there have been changes, and we've all had different COVID experiences. So when the children come back to school, whatever their age, be they, you know, nursery or sixth form, going back to university, whatever, and all the ages in between, whatever the ages, people will have had experiences that are new to them, and that's really important to appreciate and to give them time. And this is the thing, I've said it before about other things, we need time. So we need time to process what's happened to us, to share what's happened to us, to come to terms with how life has been over the last, you know, few months, several months. Now, there will be links between different people's experiences, there will be connections, there'll be similarities, there'll be differences. And these need to be expressed. Now, I'm not talking about you know, everyone comes back, we make sure that the first day back, everyone gets the chance to tell their story. No. This is a slow process. It's not a one-off show and tell on a Monday morning. That's not what I'm talking about. In the rush to catch up, that's what everyone seems to be talking about. Oh, we've lost all this education, we've got to catch up. I'm not talking about exams here. I'm not talking about our qualifications. I'm talking about the moral purpose of education in preparing us for our life. And in my various roles as tutor and supervisor for NPQ leadership qualifications, for the Nasenko, one of the things that gets asked a lot is, what is your moral purpose in education? Very few people say to get everybody the best grades in GCSE they can get. That's not their main purpose. It's obviously a big part of it, you know, we are in the game of qualifying our children to become whatever to do in life, but their purpose is to prepare them for life. This comes up so often, to build the characteristics, the resilience and so on. Well, if that's really our moral purpose in education, then we need to take the time to allow for what has been happening since March, and for some people since before March, to actually be considered, to be processed, to be shared, and for us to be able to learn from it and move on and cope with the things that life throws us in the future. So there's different ways of sharing and expressing these things. I'm not just talking, as I say, about a show and tell. For some people, talking about it is not the right way. It could come out through art, it could come out through music, it could come out through storytelling, it could come out through metaphors. it could come out through poetry, and there's so many different ways it could come out, but in doing something in history, somebody suddenly says, wow, that echoes something I went through. It could be that doing something in geography and talking about something, a disaster in a certain country, and they're like, oh my God, but that's how I felt. It could come out in so many different ways. So it's about making time and being creative in our curriculum and our delivery of the curriculum to ensure that these opportunities are there. We know that through, I'm special needs based. Now, anyone who works in special ed knows that we need time, we need to embed things, we need to build on things. So just as we need time to not just say, you did your times tables once correctly, therefore you know it, let's move on to the next thing. We know you have to embed these things, you have to consolidate them, you have to ensure that people really, really know what they're doing, and it's not just oh yes, I can recite this once. This is something that is embedded and built on. We do that a lot when we're working with anyone with special educational needs. We need to do that with our education. We need to give children the time to learn, not feel we've got to rush and catch up, and therefore not build the proper foundations and skip things because we need to move on to the next. The same is true with our storytelling. The same is true with our revisiting the experiences we've had. There are going to be people coming back to school who have had a great time. There's going to be people who have been like, wow, I got to spend all this time with my parents, and we went on, we did this project and we did that project and we looked at stuff I was interested in, it was amazing. There'll be other people who are like, I haven't seen my grandparents for 5 months, and I normally see them every day, and that's a great loss. There'll be people who have had bereavement in the family. There will be people whose parents have lost their jobs or their income their income has gone down, and suddenly there's financial hardships that they've not had to cope with. There will be children dealing with their parents dealing with stress, and suddenly their parents are changing. There'll be children whose parents have had COVID and who've lost their energy and who are just struggling to get through each day, because we know that for a lot of people, when they've had COVID, even if they've not had it severely enough to be hospitalised, they are left for months with this just exhaustion. Well, if you've had a very energetic, go-getting set of parents who, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and suddenly they're struggling to get out of bed, that is going to affect the child. And we need to give our children the opportunity to really talk this through, work through it, and that is not a let's do this on the first day back, let's get it all going. So yes, there's loads of things we need to do about flexible schooling. There's loads of things we can learn about the various platforms we've been using and keeping that up. What have we learned from our experience during lockdown, and how can we ensure that we are creative in our education and we learn and we move on and we don't lose these newfound skills or these new opportunities. There's all of that, and that is something I will almost certainly talk about again. But what I'm really concerned about with all this talk about how will we cope when we go back to school is that we don't rush to catch up. We take our time to give our children time, however old they are. They're our children. If they're 20 and they're at university, they're still our children. To give them time to come to terms and opportunities to work through what they've been through, express it, share it, think about it, reflect on it, work out life lessons from it. I'm drawn back. I keep coming back to this book, A Curriculum of Hope by Deborah Kidd, and I'm thinking to myself, what would she do going back to school now? And she would be using these stories. She would be tying it to things across the curriculum that need to be taught. That's never in question. But she would be encouraging people to draw from the experiences they have undergone and apply them to the things we have to learn in the curriculum, and that gives us an opportunity to contemplate, to reflect, to work out what this might mean going forwards. What has it meant for us? Give our children time, give ourselves time, and let's not forget, let's give our teachers time. These teachers are exhausted. They have been working using new platforms, new ways of teaching. They've been doing a bubble at school that's never been the age they've taught. They've been teaching subjects they've not taught, and they're still coping with whatever's gone on at home. So in giving our children time in the curriculum to work through everything and to express, it's also giving our teachers time, and they need the time too. So let's not rush. Let's move forwards rather than play catch up. Let's work out where we go from here in a way that draws on what we've learned, what we've suffered, what we've experienced, and takes that forward into our life in a positive way. Let's give ourselves time. Thank you.